Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and I'm here to talk about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, and a big aspect of what the Tao helps us do is live a more reasonable life. What I mean when I say live a reasonable life, and why I use that term, is because the Tao Te Ching helps us accept things as they are. So just like the idea of the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change and change the things I can. The Tao Te Ching does a lot of that. It really helps us embrace that which is. And it separates this idea of what is manifestation and what is truth, right? Manifestation convinces us that it is true. But the truth doesn't go around trying to prove itself. It just is. Truth is within us. Within each and every one of us, we are all connected. We are all aligned with Tao, whether we want to accept that or not. Anytime we have an experience that we don't like, what we're being asked to do is recognize why we would like something different. Because if we would like something different, then, well, where is that expectation coming from? Who am I? And what am I carrying? Because it's not like you can just be here and understand you at any given moment, right? Especially just immediately, right? We're born and we're under the influence of our parents. And so because we are given the frame of reference of the world through experiences we have as a child, how is that child going to understand all of the things that it's receiving? But we make rules as children as to what the world is and how we are supposed to interact in the world, or what we expect from the world around us through all of these things. And so this is where I saw myself 20 some odd years ago when I started getting sober, clean and sober. I have 23 years clean and sober, and that's a big aspect of when I talk about living, recovering yourself, so recovering to something, not from it. And a big aspect of how I was able to arrive here in my life, wherever this is through the Tao Te Ching. And once again, the Tao Te Ching helps us live a more reasonable life. So what I ask is that if you're interested, definitely come up on stage with me. We'll have a brief conversation about what's going on with you. This is sort of like picking an oracle or an oracle card or a tarot card, and finding out a new way of looking at things, getting a new perspective on something, allowing ourselves to be present with what is right now. And so when we do a little chat just about like where you're at, what's going on in your life, we can set a baseline of what information is it that you're looking to hear, or what is it that you need to hear right now. Remember in the Matrix movie when Neo went and saw the Oracle, and the Oracle was like, no, you're nothing. And then the other guy, Morpheus, was like, no, she said what you needed to hear. And it's so important to recognize that. Like, sometimes the information you need to hear is information that you need to receive so that you can make a change. So it doesn't necessarily mean that what you need to hear is the truth, or what you need to hear is the quote unquote right answer. What you need to do, like in everything in your life, is driving you towards being more you, being more whoever you are. How many of us are currently living under the influence of another person? Whether that's your parents, your boss when you're at work, or even when you go out with your friends from work. Maybe it is people from work. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's the economic system or the education system. So many people get caught up in living under the influence of getting feedback, like grades or promotions or other things like that. But life isn't always about feedback. Sometimes you just have to be fulfilled with what's happened. But we try and fill our lives with all of these things. And the Tao Te Ching helps us sort of manage some of that, because we're no longer living under the influence. We're no longer looking simply at the manifestation, but we're starting to look at the broader perspective of who we are and the spirit that connects each and every one of us. Now, we could talk about spirit and other things. And yesterday, or a couple days ago, I think I read one. And that was the first verse of the Tao, which I love, and talks about words and how words cannot express Tao. And to start a book and say, look, words can't express this thing, and to recognize that no matter what you're reading in here, no matter what you experience while you're reading this, that's not it. So if you can explain it, that's not it. It is deeper than that. And it's really, and I don't want to say in meditation, but it is like when you are quiet, that Tao really shines and guides us. So if you're interested in picking a number, please step up and let's have a little conversation, and then you can, then we can have a little chat. Oh, Cecilia, how are you, dear?
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Where do you find yourself
I'm
today?
still in Vegas until next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 4:04 a.m. here. So yeah, I was gonna say I'm not sure how much feedback I can give at the moment, but I'm definitely here to absorb. And then probably later in the afternoon, I'll be like, yeah,
Yeah. And
okay.
I'll definitely send you the text if you wanted to pick a number.
Sure. Today's the 145th day of the year, so I'd like 145, please.
Between 1 and 81.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's so funny. 30, actually. Yeah, 30 was the first one that came to mind.
30.
Mhm.
Tao Does Not Dominate is the title of 30. And this is good. Governing in any capacity when led by Tao doesn't use force to gain power. Every force applied will suffer an equal counterforce. So violence, however it is intended, will always rebound upon itself. Where armies march, briers grow, and in their wake follows hunger and villainy. Skillful in what she does, the master achieves her goal and stops, neither forcing nor manipulating further. She knows that dominating goes counter to Tao, and whoever opposes Tao will certainly die early. That's a lot,
Yeah,
especially because it's talking about governing and armies and other things, but that's an extreme.
right.
And so when we look at this, we have to say, like when I look at this in relation to you and you're moving on and the way that you live, that I know. I mean, I don't know much, right? I mean, but governing in any capacity when led by Tao doesn't use force to gain power.
Mm.
What does that say to you, if anything?
Mm. Like going with the flow, like
Mm-hmm.
inspiration, allowing inspiration to move me, and
Yeah,
like not thinking, but just feeling.
right. And like in that, there's no applied force,
Right.
right? You're not forcing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, the next line, every force applied will suffer an equal counterforce.
Mm. Yeah, it's like resistance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now this once again takes up the mantle of war, But so violence, but it should say, so anything, however it is intended, will always rebound upon oneself. So violence, however it is intended, will rebound upon oneself. Love, however it is intended, will rebound upon oneself.
Karma.
Karma, right, right. And so the idea of applied force versus what you're talking about, which is going with the flow, there's a difference between innocence and like wanting to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
When you want to manipulate something, you apply a force, you think about something and then you do something in order to manipulate that thing. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe you want to manipulate a cup so it's not as far close to the edge of the table so it doesn't spill. And that's fine. But have you ever recognized that you've done that without even recognizing that you've done that? Like
Until
you,
I, until I recognize that I've done it, yes.
right. It's like, oh wait, I did that thing and I
Right.
didn't realize I did that thing.
Hmm.
There's no force being applied. You just simply moved it.
Yes.
You know, like, cause you are in flow
Hmm.
with everything that's happening.
I would say like something like my apartment in New York when I first got there. It was the first time I went back home for in 6 years, and I went to stay at an Airbnb. And when I got into the Airbnb, I was like, first of all, I forgot how beautiful this neighborhood is, and I said out loud, I want to stay in this neighborhood. Not only do I want to stay in this neighborhood, I want to stay in this Airbnb. And I wound up running the Airbnb,
Wow.
and there was no, like, oh, how am I going to figure this out or anything like
Wow.
that. It was like, I started speaking to the guy, and he wanted to go travel to Alaska. And so it was just like, perfect. Everything, of course, because I said what I wanted out loud, and there was no like, yeah, no trying to manipulate anything. It was just like natural conversation and everything, just, puzzle pieces and all that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And that's it, right? Like, no, you didn't apply any force.
Nope, nope, not at all. Just like I said, just a simple conversations, and yeah, it was perfect, right place at the right time, all that good stuff,
Well, yeah, that's just your life. That's what life
Yeah,
is. Life
yeah.
is all just right place, right time. Now, are you willing to receive that, or are you trying to manipulate that in one way or another? You know,
Receive, because
receive,
I've
yeah.
tried the other, I've tried manipulating and uh, all that, hard work and stuff like that, and that is resistance. So
That is
yeah.
all resistance, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what this next line is, which where armies march, briers grow, and in their wake follows hunger and villainy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once again, we want to take a broad view of what Lao Tzu means by armies here. Like, we're armies. What do armies do? Armies go in to manipulate. Armies go in to try and control things. Armies go in to, do these, do violence.
In 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 what was I going to try and say? Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? But what they're portraying is protection.
Right.
Right.
But nothing needs protecting.
Right.
Everything is blessed
Protected.
already.
Right.
Right?
Hmm.
So when we look at that from a broad perspective, you know, anytime you send something in to try and manipulate or to try and to, be in control of something,
Hmm.
briars grow. Do you know what a briar is?
It sounds like a shrub of sorts.
Right. It's essentially a field of thorns, of thorny shrubs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like woody and it's hard to maneuver and sometimes you just can't at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you try and control something, you're really closing yourself in
Mm-hmm.
and giving yourself less options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and then it says, and in their wake follows hunger and villainy. Hunger because you've lost all of your options and you're now in this one position and everything you do has to stay in that. And so the villainy aspect is like trying to manipulate further so you can get yourself out of this mess.
That you didn't have to be in at all.
Right. And
That you
then it
chose.
starts talking about the master. Skillful in what she does, the master achieves her goal and stops. And what is her goal?
Life. Like,
Right, right. Just to live her life.
yeah,
Absolutely.
adventure
Yeah.
and all that.
Neither forcing or manipulating further. Here it is. She's not going to force anything. She's not going to manipulate anything. This is what life is. Does it
Mm-hmm.
suck right now? Sure, sometimes. And then it's going to grow and it's going to change. But I don't have to manipulate it. I don't have to force it to be something else.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that dominating, goes counter to Tao.
That's right.
And
Yes.
whoever opposes Tao will certainly die early.
Mm. Yeah, and I gotta say that's probably my biggest lessons on my travels since leaving New York, in the past 6 years to, not try so hard, you know, to
It's
just
hard to say that, isn't
relax
it?
and trust and you know,
Yeah,
yeah, because like our brains are so used to thinking that we have all of this control over everything, and so if
right.
I just, if I just keep at this one thing, it will happen, and then if it doesn't, because it's not meant for you, we're like devastated, not
Yeah,
realizing that it's actually for us.
right.
So yeah, lots of beautiful lessons, and that was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Martin John, you have a fantastic day, and I hope you
You as well, my dear.
won't
And
be
my best to
botherously.
Lois and everybody there.
Yep. Thank you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Love you.
We have Catherine Taylor in the queue. Catherine, thank you for being patient as we went through number 30. Do you have your interview today, Catherine?
It was yesterday.
It was yes. How
Um,
did it go?
well, I felt like I had to say I didn't have experience for a couple things too much.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm not too confident, but something weird happened. So it's a really small division I was interviewing for. It was just the deputy commissioner and the executive assistant, which is the position I interviewed for. And then they sent out an email to all of us that she was no longer with the department, which is a sudden notification, which typically means that she was fired, but they can't actually tell us that.
Yeah.
So I had no idea who would be my supervisor, like
Hmm.
now that I interviewed for. So, and then I ended up interviewing, it was a panel because they always do panels because I work for the state government. They always have a
Yeah.
panel. So the commissioner was actually in there instead, who is in charge of the entire department instead of just the division. So I was a little um intimidated. I mean, she seems pretty nice and stuff. Like I've talked to her before, but like I was like, oh gosh, the commissioner's in here now I'm interviewing with.
Well, I would definitely see so what's happening there, and I want to point these things out. Like you have a preconceived idea of the position of the commissioner,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But what that allows you to do is just to recognize that. Recognize that within you and what the feelings are. It's just about observing how your body responds, how your mind responds when things change. Now, you may very well have opened yourself up to observing all of these things more now and who knows how much has happened energetically in your life. I like to look at things sometimes as this gets pretty esoteric, so stop me if it gets too far. But energetically we resonate with things around us, and we get to see things through how we understand the world. Like, we perceive things and then we see them, and it aligns with a world that we created. The more you open your mind, the more things just start to shift and change and, like, become more unknown and become more mysterious. And it helps us sometimes be more in awe with our own lives.
Yeah, I do find that feeling of awe because I mean, I'm actually a practicing Wiccan, so like I do believe in the energetic connections and stuff. And this Tao, I just like to incorporate a lot of different religious things that I agree with or spiritual things that I agree with,
Yeah.
and I'm really liking this Tao stuff, and that really goes right along with it because I do believe that we're all connected, and you didn't you kind of that's kind of a big idea that you introduced, but it does fit along with my beliefs, and you know, I think it went the way it was supposed to. Um,
Absolutely. Nothing else I
the
could do, right?
Yeah, they tell me, because now that the position of the supervisor is vacant, that it will take longer to make a decision about hiring the assistant because the supervisor will need to have input on who their assistant will be.
See,
So,
and now, so here's my mind moving. Like, wow, you opened yourself up so much that you created a situation that this now has to happen. Now, again, this may or may not be the right position for you,
right.
whatever. But just the fact that you interviewed with the panel, the commissioner was there, all of this might set you up for a different sort of relationship that you have with the commissioner or people on the panel, or like, this is the right job for you, but you need a different supervisor. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so who knows what you're doing energetically, but the more you define what you're doing, so if you look back and say, oh, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, that's fine. Don't hold on to any of it. It all has to be forfeit. It all has to be like, when you allow yourself to, this is the best for me. This
yeah.
is the best for me. That's such a beautiful place to be.
So the other thing is, I found out later after the interview because I had told my supervisor that I was interviewing,
Yeah.
and his wife used to work up there with those in that area. And he told me that that lady that got fired was notoriously hard to work for and that she went through a lot of executive assistants.
Wow. See, this is all so perfect.
Yeah.
You have to be
So,
patient.
yeah.
Remember, I think we talked about one that was like, Tao is patient.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
unlike man, Tao is patient.
that's something I have been working on for a long time is patience.
Yeah. And this is showing you that, right? Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong. Absolutely nothing went wrong,
Right.
right?
Well,
But
not for me, maybe for who got fired, but
oh, well, I mean, no, like, the person who got fired, that was
sure.
perfect for them as well. They might not see it that way. That might
Right.
cause them grief. But when you get fired, or when a person gets fired, or when a person's life shifts, are you open, just like I was talking to Cecilia about, are you open to receiving that? Are you open to receiving this experience? Because you don't know what's going to be next. You could find new people for your life, and that you respect, and you can get paid more money. Who knows what's next?
Yeah.
You know. So let's find a number to move us into this next stage.
Okay. I'm thinking 8 today.
Number 8.
Yep.
I like the low numbers. The low numbers are good. Oh, this one's perfect. It's entitled "Be Like Water."
Ah, I've heard this phrase before.
Yeah. Water is humble, always traveling to the lowest place, nourishing without taxing everything along the way. In so doing, it is like Tao. The master aims to resemble water. In thinking, she is simple. In conflict, she is yielding. In governing, she doesn't need to control. In work, she does the obvious thing. In family life, she is continually present. When one can be content with being and not require comparison or praise, it is said they invest in their life by making of it a donation. So what stood out to you there?
But I like that in part, making your life a donation. That sounds really selfless. Um, Basically, I just lost my thought. It was, I can't get it
it,
back.
it
Oh well.
it definitely, like, when we listen to these, we can hear them, but then we go into, like, it's interesting how little sometimes we can remember from what we
So
just.
I think I'm getting it back. Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Um, so like I remember in science learning about water and osmosis and the process of moving from drier area to, moving moisture
Mhm.
until it's balanced.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking of as you were reading that, water just flows. And at the same time, it can, erode rocks. It
Yeah.
created the Grand Canyon for that matter. And you don't have to be forceful. You just follow the flow, and you'll go where you need to go.
Right. Let's break this down a little bit. 'Cause you're right. But because I'm looking at, like, some of these first lines, and that was a while ago that we read those. So I want to kind of go back. Water is humble. So that's where we start. It just
Hmm.
says, it just makes this: water is humble. Now, the question is, well, how can you call water humble? And it says, always traveling to the lowest place, nourishing without taxing everything along the way. What does that say to you?
Water is selfless. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, where it needs to go is
It
where it
goes
goes.
where it needs to go and nourishes without taxing everything along the way. This is a big difference sometimes because, like, as human beings, as people, not being water, we can be humble, but can we be humble to the point of nourishing everything that we come in contact with without taxing it in any way? That's what
That
makes
involves
water
the death of ego, I think.
completely. And the thing is we shouldn't do that, really, right? Because that would take everything from us. However, we look at this and we say, this is what water does. This isn't necessarily how we need to be. Because if we did nourish everything without taxing anything, we would be diminished. Like,
Mm,
if an addict comes into our life, like, right, like, and we, like, just giving isn't going, we do have to at some point have good boundaries and have things like that. Like, there is a way to
sure.
do that without taxing the other person, but they may believe that you're taxing them by telling them no,
Hmm.
right? But you're not. You're not the one taxing them. They're taxing themselves. But it doesn't look like that in the manifestation. It looks like you're telling me no, you know?
Yeah.
But water doesn't even do that. Water just trickles down, and everything it passes, it nourishes. It just feeds everything. In so doing, it is like Tao. It just, without regard, it will give you what you need. The master aims to resemble water. Okay, now we want to resemble water. We don't want to be water. In
Hmm.
thinking, she is simple. In conflict, she is yielding. In governing, she doesn't need to control. In work, she does the obvious thing. In family life, she is continually present. So that's a list of 6 things and how the master can resemble water. And just being humble, yield, but don't give up everything. Yield to other people. Let them wear themselves out. And when I think about this as it relates to your situation with the job, it's like you're going to have to not, like in governing, you don't need to control.
Hmm.
So you don't need to control how this is going to work out. In work, you do the obvious thing. What's the obvious thing? What's the next most obvious thing? You interviewed, now what? You wait. You're patient. You do your job, and maybe you start to gain some experience in those areas that you learned you don't have experience in. So when you get interviewed by the next person, you're more equipped.
Yeah, I like that.
That's the next most obvious thing.
Hmm.
Because that was the one thing you told me that you were like, oh, I'm not as qualified here and here. Well, you have time now.
Yeah, that is like, yeah, that's totally, I can talk to my supervisor about that and see if we can work on getting me experience in that. They have a program called Engage where we talk to them about our career goals
Yeah.
and we make plans. So, and he's totally willing to work with me because he's pretty new. He started a few months ago, but he's
Yeah.
been a pretty good supervisor.
Good. Right? So in work, she does the obvious thing. There couldn't be anything more obvious than taking the negative that you thought about the interview and turning it into a positive.
Yeah.
When one can be content with being and not require comparison or praise, it is said that they invest in their life by making of it a donation. Just be. And this moment becomes the life that you're leading, the life that you're living, your life. There's no reason to compare with other people. No reason to, you don't even need praise. Like, so if you are being now and you go to your boss and let's say you try and get experience in things that you're doing, that might open you up to other positions, other possibilities for your life. But be content with what you're doing more than being content with the idea that you're in the running for a job or a promotion.
Yeah, I already like my job I do now. I just,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, be content with that and get better at it by increasing your ability to in these areas that you don't have experience or whatever.
yeah.
So beautiful.
Yay. That was the right one, of course.
What's that?
I said that was the right one, of course.
Yeah, of
So I
course,
picked the right
always.
one.
And humility, and be like water. Water is humble, always traveling. Like, so what other things do you do in your life?
Um, well, I
I mean,
have
we've
my,
talked a lot about your work. That's all.
yeah, we talked about my work. Um, my rabbit, I'm taking care of my
Oh, right,
old
right.
rabbit. Um, well, basically I'm working on improving my life all around. I spent most of my life with complex PTSD and I finished
Mm,
EMDR a
mm,
couple months ago.
nice.
So I am like trying to adjust to not being hypervigilant anymore because that was my biggest problem. And I was hypervigilant for like as long as I can remember. So
Yeah,
um, now it is like a whole new world for me. So I'm just like, just this year is like, I turned 40 in less than 2 months. And I'm like, I
no,
feel like I have a new life starting,
yeah,
without being held back by all the symptoms. I mean, and as
yeah.
part of that PTSD, I did become an alcoholic. which is another reason I like listening to you because you're also recovering. And
Yeah.
that I've been sober for, let's see, since November 1st of 2016. I can
Oh,
never remember the year.
congratulations.
Thank you. I definitely like it better this way.
Yeah.
Um, so when I think about alcohol, it makes me want to barf now, like the taste and stuff. Like I just can't even. So um, part of this is that I'm having physical health problems because of my weight, because I was on a medication for my alcohol use disorder for several
Okay.
years that made me gain a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
yes, and then I discovered some physical health issues, like I have fatty liver, but then I've been in pain. And it took a lot of investigation, but because of the way my skeleton grew, my hips are impinged. So they're
Mm-hmm.
pinched together closer than they should be. And excess weight is aggravating it to the point that I can't sleep. I can't lay down for 6 hours straight without it hurting.
Mm.
So, yeah. Which, I mean, when I got sober, I came to terms with that I was going to have to learn how to live with pain, physical pain, because I didn't want any
Well,
narcotics or anything.
right.
So I've worked on that a lot. But I can't mindfulness my way back to sleep once it starts hurting, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, well, like I do want to, I'm gonna offer up a little bit, for that. One, energetically, these are energetic things that, you will have to, okay, so any pain, anything in the manifestation, starts as starts somewhere in your life as a thought, or whatever. And then we can talk about like law of attraction, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure. But when we look at Tao, um, Tao is sort of guiding you and moving you through things. And yes, you are in pain, and it is your hips. And your hips, like, what do your hips do? Your hips help you bend, right? Your hips help you, support. And when I think about you having experienced PTSD, my guess is that you needed to stand on your own while people were trying to, push you down. Right?
Yes.
This is all just speculation from how you've spoken about it. Now, when I think about that, I think about energetically. If we look at that, like, yeah, of course your hips are, because you've been holding all of this weight energetically and emotionally on your shoulders. Now, you're also holding weight physically,
Hmm.
right? And there's a lot of fear of letting go of some of that weight because you're so accustomed to being in that state, because you've been in that state for so long. You're not only physically, overweight or whatnot, but also emotionally holding all of this. Right? When I work with individuals, we always talk about, like, well, where is this coming from? And my guess is that you had a childhood that resembled that as well, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it's like not just an adulthood. Like now, in like maybe a year ago, or maybe when you quit drinking, you started to recognize. Now, I always talk about addiction as the first 5 years are early recovery, and then the next 2 years are mid recovery, and that's a really hard time, and that's where you're at right now, I think. No, you're about 9, right?
I don't know, 2016,
Yeah,
2024.
okay. So you're
Okay.
about 8. So
Yeah.
you're kind of in this middle recovery, moving into long-term recovery. It's a really hard process. The last 3 years have probably been pretty difficult in terms of your recovery. Not that you would want to go drink, just that
Yeah.
you are getting a brand new brain that is really sort of laying the world out differently for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the process. And you will get through this, because what you're doing is you're utilizing your brain for the first time as you. And so you have a lot of like byproduct of 40 years of living that still has to get worked out. And you're going to work it out. And as you do, you're going to have more faith in yourself and you're going to love yourself more. Now, being able to recognize that this pain is something that you're experiencing because there are actions that you took previously in your life when you were an alcoholic, or before when you were under the influence of your parents, or the trauma or other
Hmm.
things. We have to recognize that although it's not our fault, it is our responsibility, and we did engage this. And it does need love. The pain that you're experiencing is a part of you that needs to be loved. And the more you hate it, the longer it's going to be there.
Hmm. Well,
It's a part of you.
that's quite a yes. That's really what I've been working on. All of that.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful, right? Like not trying to, again, not resist. That resist causes that pain to increase.
Right.
Yielding, right? Like
Yeah.
in conflict, because you have conflict with your pain, she is yielding. That's what this says in number 8.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like that directly applies to my pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Mm,
breaking that down.
absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really,
Yeah.
I'm really loving learning about like where you're at and what you're up to. So, thank you so much for joining me and for picking these and to really like going through them with me and because the Tao is beautiful and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful text and I'm really excited to be able to present it. So,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
absolutely. Okay, so wow, that was beautiful. Um, and yeah, we're here. We got a little bit more time. Be like water, humble, always traveling to the lowest place. That's humility, right? Like we read the other day the idea of like always um putting yourself last but finding yourself first. Um, Mark is going to join me. Mark, how are you? What's going on with you? We're gonna do the big countdown and have you come up. How's it going, Mark?
It's going great. Thanks
Good.
for I've never heard you before at all. I just got, I'm on relatively new to Noom, and I have the notifications all, on, which normally with all my other stuff I don't have notifications because it's just distracting.
Damn
But
right it is.
but what's funny is I don't know how I turned it on, or I don't know how to turn it off, and I kind of like it. So it's 4:35 here in the Northwest, and I have no idea why I woke up. I woke up and my phone dinged like it does all the time with this damn app, and I'm like, oh, what's happening? I'm awake now, which I don't
Right.
need to be awake. I can be asleep for a couple more hours. So I have to get up, but I just heard stuff. No, actually, sorry, I gotta turn it back. I didn't get a notification about your thing. Well, no, sorry. I got a notification, but it didn't activate anything. So the title sucked me in because I'm a Tao aficionado.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
so I saw your title and I just hit listen. Anyway, I'm blabbling, I'm babbling on, but your stuff was like perfect to me. So
Oh,
thank you.
good. Absolutely. So I'd love to engage another Tao aficionado. um, what's going on with you these days? I mean, obviously you woke up at 4 something in the morning and that wasn't expected.
Well, like something that you probably never heard of before, but I've heard of, and I didn't know about it until I heard about it. So you can be stressed out even with the Tao. You can be stressed out, and stress. can be good because things might be
Oh yeah.
bad, and your stress may say, "I got to hit the road because this is an unwinnable solution." If you didn't have stress, you would just sit there. So you need a little bit of stress to motivate your
Oh,
action.
yeah.
But
It's
there's
just, yeah,
another.
it's not. Yeah, go
Go
on.
ahead. Oh, the other thing I was
No,
going to say,
stress is beautiful. It's part of the whole thing. Yeah.
so the other thing I was going to say, I learned, um, let's just say, uh, personal self help or therapy. I learned of a term, and I think I've read this like 20 plus years ago, and it said, yeah, you know what stress is, but what you don't pay attention to is there's two kinds of stress. There's distress, which is bad
Mm-hmm.
because you're uncomfortable, basically. So that's the gist of distress. But what you don't think about, but is equally valid, and depending on the individual, maybe even more prevalent, and that is eustress. EUSPRESS. So not dis or away, but to, to stress. And the
Yeah.
eustress is effectively, you can look it up. It's good stress, right? So something
Yeah.
that you see your friend that you haven't seen in months, and you're good friends with them, and you see them, and you feel not right. You feel excited. You feel something. You feel stressed. And what people don't distinguish is no, 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 no. You don't feel distress. You feel eustress because
Right.
you're excited and you're motivated to action, but it's all good, right? So you run up to your friend, you give him a hug. That's not
Right.
because of distress, but conversely, and kind of to the Tao, um, you may see your friend and you may have some distress, and seeing your friend causes more distress in some ways, but you want to run up and get a hug from your friend. Instead of hug them because you got eustress, you're distressed, and seeing your friend kind of amplifies the frustration and everything else, but you know it's your friend, so you go to your friend, and this is the Tao part,
Right.
because of
What is
because
the
of
difference
stress.
between right and wrong, right? Like there
Yes.
is no difference. There is no
No.
difference here. It
No.
is the way that it is simply the way that you frame it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And okay, I'll tell
So,
you. I don't know how much more time I have, but I got another minute or
well,
two
well,
to
I
tell
would
you.
love to get you to pick a number between 1 and 81 so we can actually dive into a chapter together.
Uh, well, I have four favorite numbers. One isn't a number. My favorite of all favorites is zero, because it's like the Tao. It's neither
Mhm.
plus nor minus. It's nothing and everything. So that's my favorite number. But as we know, if you study it, they say, well, zero is not a number. It isn't a number. It's the absence of number, so it's not a number. And
And it's
so,
not between 1 and 81, so you can't
good
pick that
point,
one.
dude. I love it. I love it. Okay, so my first favorite number was 33 because of football reasons. My second favorite number is 4, and I love this reason, but it's kind of self-serving. And then my last favorite number is the Chinese 88. So I got 4, I got 33, I got 88.
All right, so you want to pick one of those? Not
Let's go.
88, because you have to go with 81 or less.
Oh, sorry. 33 is great. This is my first favorite number.
Yeah, 33. 33 is entitled You Are Not Manifestation. Study others and gain some knowledge. Study yourself and gain deep wisdom. Controlling others takes strength, but controlling your ego and desires takes power and perseverance. Knowing that you have enough gives you wealth. Grasping for money and love forces you to conform. Embrace who you are and stay centered in that. And although you will die, you will not perish.
That's
What are you?
fantastic. I just linked to you. I hadn't followed you. I
Oh,
stumbled
yeah.
upon you, but you're 100% worth the follow. In fact, I don't know anybody who's more worth the follow because I
Oh.
love the Tao. So the reason why I came upon the Tao, I had a bipolar manic episode when I was 28, and
Oh,
it was,
Saturn's return. Are you familiar with Saturn's return?
well, I can't talk about it, but yes. So anyway, just to get to
Okay.
the point real quick. So I 4 years later, and they just diagnosed it, and they said, yeah, you had some psychosis, and it's because of bipolar, so you need to take this lithium because it'll take care of it. So for 4 years,
Oh.
it took For 4 years, it took care of it, and I'm
Yeah.
still on it till today. Basically, I took it today.
Okay.
Anyway, it works fine. But
Good. Yeah.
when I was 4 years later, when I was, I guess it was 1999, so I was 32. I was reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and
Yeah.
anyway, the climax of the thing is he loses his mind and he has to be involuntarily committed, and then they submit him to ECT, electroconvulsive therapy against his will, and all this stuff happens. And right before they incarcerated him against his will, for his safety and their own, which is totally sensible, he had an epiphany. But he can't quite remember exactly what the epiphany was. It was this big intellectual journey, and what happened was he had this epiphany, and basically he had understood and read the Tao before, but he didn't really, well, sorry, he had read the Tao or looked at the Tao, but he hadn't really followed it because he's a Western guy. And he
Yeah.
was kind of exploring this Eastern stuff. And when he was at the peak of his mental acuity from this, manic stuff, basically, when he was having an episode after many, many hundreds of hours thinking about this stuff, he had this epiphany, and all of his intellectual pursuit was irrelevant. And he read the Tao, and he said, all these hundreds or thousands of hours of my mental machinations trying to figure this stuff out, like Western truth, I read the Tao, and they figured this out hundreds, thousands of years ago.
Thousand.
And it's exactly the truth. It is what I've been seeking for. It is ultimate thing. I am merged with God. I am merged with everything. I am realized. I am awoke. I'm all this stuff. But he doesn't know what it is. And I have to tell you, his experience brought me to tears, and it spun me into another manic episode because that was my first episode.
Oh wow.
And I didn't get involuntarily incarcerated, but no one did anything to me. Right? They didn't do that. It's like against the law right now to
Yeah.
involuntarily give somebody ECT. So, but it wasn't then. Anyway, so I didn't have any ECT or anything. Although one old psychiatrist said offhand to my friends and family that, what he needs is ECT. This will take care of that.
No. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't had that. I've had medication that's not totally different, but not. I haven't had anything like involuntarily, physically done to me, which is great.
Yeah, because then it's tough after like it's tough either way. So what this is saying is you are not simply this body.
Right,
And
right.
that's
Of
something that's
course.
really so important to understand, especially when it's like, some people may need ECT, some people may need medication, some people may need to change diet, some people may need one thing or another. But when you study others, all you do is you gain with knowledge. You gain knowledge that they needed that. Maybe it'll help for me. And then you start,
That's so
and
funny.
then you
That's
become
awesome.
this searcher of
Yes,
stuff. But when you
yes.
study yourself, that's when you start to gain wisdom. That's when you start to know who you are and recognize that they can be who they are while I can be who I am. And that doesn't have to be the same thing.
No, but the Tao part of it is once you realize who you are indistinguishable from other, whether that's another person or
Right.
anything in nature. So it's like,
Right.
wait a minute. How can I be myself if I'm no different? It's
Well, and that's
non-duality.
the beautiful thing, because the fact that like someone else needs ECT, you can love that as a solution for them. Now, if they don't, and that you can still love them for where they are. There is no difference. There's no separation.
Right. And that,
They
sorry.
are you.
I have to tell you this, and it's,
Please.
you have a lot of listeners, so it's embarrassing. I haven't ever said this to so many people, but I have a vanity plate, and I have 6 tattoos, and all 6 of my tattoos mean the same thing as my vanity plate, and it's on my profile here on Noom Vibe. It's like, the reason why I do this is because I was introduced to this concept like, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. And as soon as I was introduced to it, I'm like, well, that's it. This is the
Yeah.
Tao. This is the truth. This is the stuff in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Man. This is the Tao. This is the way. This is it. This is Lao Tzu. This is everything.
Right.
And what it is Advaita Vedanta means non-duality, and it started in like, Sanskrit stuff was written about it thousands of years ago. And like the Tao, it's just foundational knowledge that is the truth, and it is this point. It means obviously non-dual just means zero, right? It's not one, it's not two, it's literally lack of difference. And then if you can recognize this about yourself, um, then you're humbled and you're say, that person needed ECT, I don't need it, and I'm not going to do it. But I
And
don't
there's no
fault that
judgment
person.
there on
Yes.
either side. Right.
Actually, sorry, the most important thing I can say, period, is non-duality means no judgment, because there is no difference. If you look at it the right way, there's no difference. Up and down
Right.
are just directions. That's one direction, right? Up
And
and
that's what
down.
brings us into the next line, which is controlling others takes strength. But
Yes.
controlling your ego and desire takes power and perseverance. And that comes
So
from within
great.
you.
That's so great. Fabulous.
And then knowing that you have enough gives you wealth. Grasping for money and love forces you to conform. I was telling someone the other day, like, if somebody knows what you want, they can manipulate you into doing whatever they want.
That's a scary thing, because I met a guy who's a real great friend of mine, but he's a hypnotist, and I didn't know anything about hypnotists.
Yeah,
And he actually hypnotized me, and I saw him hypnotize other people by doing just that thing, like figuring out by hanging out with the person, what is the one word or couple of words that really gets at what they're all about, what they think they want. And then if you just slip that word into like casual conversation, you're essentially hypnotizing that person to like you and do what you say,
that's right.
because like just what you said exactly.
Right. You become very easily manipulated because the manifestation, the world around us, is such a physical thing that we attach all of these, meetings, all of these measurements, all of these things in the world, and we lose sight of ourselves, right? Because we've studied too much of others. We've
Yes, yes,
studied,
yes,
we've gained too much, and we've leaned too much on knowledge. And
yes.
so we want to control others, yes, but that takes strength. Where really, if I can control my ego and desires, then I'm not manipulatable, right?
Right,
Like
right.
I know that I can be myself. But we often, you are not manifestation is the title of this, meaning that like the more we engage in knowledge, the more we engage in the physical, the more we think we know, the further off we are from who we are.
Right, right.
And
One,
so,
one, one thing that you probably heard of this too, but for the past 20, 30 years since I studied this stuff, as a part-time thing, let's be clear, I don't walk the walk, I just study it. Anyway, going back to what I was going to
right. No,
say.
no, 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 no. Yeah, that's knowledge, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of
Yeah,
this manifestation. That's good.
yeah. But I was going to get at, and I learned this, there's a guy, and since you got a lot of listeners, I'll just say his name. He was or is a University of uh, Oregon uh, professor, and his name is Amit Goswami, and he was a physicist. And what I was going to tell the story of, there's a bunch of these guys that are like advanced physicists that have accomplished something, and they get to the fact that there's no absolutes in physics, quantum mechanics stuff. So they go back to the Tao and say, "Oh, the Tao is a great representation of
Yeah,
like physical reality." And you're like, "Wait a minute, this Tao stuff is all paradoxical and confusing, and you can't understand it unless you don't think." And these physicists are
exactly.
saying that's the bottom of physics, or that's the top.
That's
Excuse me,
it.
that was
That's
a
it.
Freudian slip. The top of physics, and they're like, well, all we care about is um, understanding things. And now that we have all this physical mastery of physics to this high level, we realize that, oh, wait a second, we shouldn't be all in our head. We should be understanding that physics is kind of metaphorical to consciousness, and consciousness is real important. So
Knowledge and understanding is just another shiny thing. Being is really what life is. Everybody wants to have these accomplishments and wants to go out and be proven correct, wants to go out and be like famous or other things like that. But all of that stuff is just, like being who you are. When you get to be who you are and know that you're doing that. Now this is a long journey. This is a lifetime of
right.
constantly observing, oh, am I being, or am I under the influence, or am I just gaining knowledge? Dr. Rao, who's in the queue right now, he's another great follow. He talks
He's
about
not a great fellow. That guy, he's a quack, man. He says stuff that doesn't make any sense. I try to listen to him. I'm like, I got to get off this guy's stuff. Just kidding. Hi, Dr. Rao.
Dr. Ra- he and I have a lot of similarities. I think we talk about things a little differently though. But Dr. Rao is one of the things that he's talked to me about is like the Tao is when you're watching a movie, it's the screen. Although you see the movie, can you see the screen beyond the movie? And that's
That's
so
brilliant. That's
and
brilliant.
that's something that's a beautiful way of understanding what Tao is. It's the substrate of what we're living life on top of, right? And so,
right.
And when we embrace the manifestation, the knowledge, controlling others and doing all these things, it's like, but can you control your ego and desires? Because your ego and desires are what come out in the manifestation. Who you are is underneath that.
Yeah, and you know what I found out a long time ago, and this is cool. I'll tell this story that's kind of self-serving, but what the hell. So I discovered this stuff, right before I had a manic episode, and my wife was pregnant with our first kid. And the reason why I was triggered is because, like, if you have one job in life, and I had good parents, so if you have one job in life, it makes you think, well, that's got to be parenting. There's nothing else. My wife was pregnant, so I took it serious. I found this book that wasn't my characteristic book. It had Western Christianity stuff and parenting advice, and it had this huge component of Eastern spirituality. So it got me to descend. It got me to this notion of non-duality, the Tao, etc. All these things, which are the same thing. And I wanted to pick a name for my daughter, and my wife wasn't into the same stuff I was into. I was new to it, and she hadn't been exposed to it. So she's like, nah, whatever, let's find a name that we like. So we had one agreement at the beginning, and that was we want a gender neutral name because we wanted to do a good job. And this was in the book, but my wife was a tomboy kind of person, big athlete and stuff, so she loved it. And it was, let's not give them a bunch of Barbies if they're a girl, or conversely, give them a bunch of GI Joes and macho stuff if they're a boy.
Right.
Let's like the progressives say today, which it wasn't that. It was simply, if a person can tap into their masculine skills and knowledge.
Let's not pigeonhole them at such a young age.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very simple notion. So that was one thing. And then the second one is we wanted a name that resonated with us that was kind of cool. So we looked at dozens of baby names and we considered a bunch. And I think my wife had a number one and I had a couple other ones. But I was looking at stuff and I wanted something that would kind of be meaningful to my daughter. And so I had been like really engrossed in this non-duality stuff. No psychosis or anything, no problems, no mental breaks. I just thought it was, I was humbled by it, and I'm like, this is how I want to lead my life and guide my kids. And it was new to me, so I hadn't thought it before. I didn't have any Eastern spirituality stuff. So anyway, I looked at the name and I said Jordan, and I don't care anything about Michael Jordan as a first priority. I mean, obviously I like it. He's noted as one of the best athletes of all time. He's got some great characteristics.
I have 3 friends that are named Jordan, so like I don't even think of Michael Jordan. But
okay,
I am from Chicago, so
that's awesome. That's awesome. So the one thing that I was kind of adamant about, and I think my wife was a little bit off to this, but she came around to my preference, and that was, if we pick a name Jordan, it's not any effing alternative spelling, because I hate being in class our whole life and you say, oh, my name's Mark. It's spelled with a K. So this isn't part of it, but I'll just get there. So people that say, "Oh, how do you spell your name?" And I'm like, "What? It's M-A-R-K. How many M-A-R-Cs do you know?" Because M-A-R-K is more popular. But granted, that's ridiculous because there's plenty of both. But anyway, my point is, I didn't want to have my daughter or my son say, "Oh, your name's Jordan." Well, you're a girl, so do you spell that Y-N? Like, no, forget all that. I
Yeah.
don't want any of that nonsense. I just want the
Right.
name. You say Jordan, everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. Everybody knows how to spell Michael Jordan. They don't question how your name is spelled. And maybe
Yeah.
they
And
do
I
because they
know, I
know.
know that, like I said, like I know a couple, some men, some women.
Yeah. And actually, there's a character Jordan that is in The Great Gatsby. That's a prominent character, and I always like the name. I think that is a different spelling, but I don't care. Obviously, I want the common spelling.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's all irrelevant. The reason why I picked the name is for one reason and one reason only. And you said this earlier, and the word can be summed up simply by saying, "What am I? What are you? What is whatever manifesting?" So we don't exist before we exist, and we don't die after we die. There's a
Right.
little code thing for you from Nadal type thinking. What happens is, yes, we, however you define we, did exist before we became a zygote and fetus and
Right.
person, right? We did exist, but it wasn't the we that we think of as
Right. It
we
wasn't the
are.
zygote. It wasn't the
No,
me. It wasn't
no,
right.
exactly. So the word Jordan, and this will be obvious to everybody listening, comes from the River Jordan in the Middle East, and it means what river means, descending. The name, the origin of the
Mm.
word Jordan in Middle Eastern times is from the Jordan River. Obviously one of the cradles of early civilization was the Middle
Right.
East. And so the name Jordan essentially means river, which essentially means descending. So I wanted to give my daughter the notion that you were here, but it's not who you think you are. You will
Right.
be left, but it's not who you think you will be left. You are just manifesting your affinities. It took me decades to come up with the second part, but you're just
Yeah.
manifesting your affinities. So choose your affinities as carefully as possible because they will define your physical existence, but they do not define you. And so if you can
Right.
expand your mind to say, I was here before I began and I will be here after I'm done, then you'll say, whoa, how am I going to spend my time? What do I think is cool? What do I think is
Right.
fruitful? What do I think is good? And I told her this when she was in high school. She went to a Catholic high school and she's like, I don't know anything about that. I don't like any of that stuff. My name's Jordan. So I'm like,
That's
okay,
and
whatever.
that's
Maybe someday.
absolutely okay. You
Yes,
enjoy that. Yeah.
yes.
Mark, I want to
So,
mention really briefly. I know on your timer you probably have like around 5 minutes left. On mine, you only have like 15 seconds. So what I'm going to do
okay,
is I'm going to drop you out. You come back up. I want to wrap this up, and then
okay.
we'll finish up. Okay, so I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to bring you. So then come back up, and then. All right, so I just want to wrap this up really quick. One, you said, like, do what you think is cool. And I love that. One of the things I tell people, if you're not one of the coolest people you know, what are you doing? Like, right? Like you,
That's awesome.
if you think something is cool, go do that thing. Now, if you don't want to invest time in that, that's fine. I can still appreciate other people doing it. But if you're not one of the coolest people you know, if you're not the coolest person you know, then what are you spending your time doing? And I also wanted to go back to this 33 and just wrap up this last line because everything
Sure.
you said about, this is not you, it wraps up in the end of this 33. Embrace who you are and stay centered in that. That doesn't mean who you define yourself to be. That doesn't mean how you identify. That means embrace who you are at this moment. Because the next line states, and although you will die, you will not perish. This part of you, like your identity as you feel you are today might die tomorrow. But you will not perish. You died as what you were before you became a zygote. Then you became a zygote and you didn't perish. But the part of you a part of you died and you became something else, and then a part of you dies and becomes something else until you are nothing, and that is the route to being everything.
One thing that I love it, and one thing that I've never talked to 151 people about any of this stuff, even remotely like this. I'm a finance guy and retired, and well, I'm a finance guy. Anyway, I don't talk about this stuff. So I just stumbled upon you, but I could talk about this stuff forever because
Yeah.
I'll tell you a real quick story. So I was a finance guy, and I told you right after. So I had one psychotic break, and then they gave me lithium, and I was happy and fine, right? For 4 years, nothing happened. And I didn't think too much about this stuff that I kind of sent me over the edge. I was fine, and my second daughter was born. Everything's great, and then I read. I read. My second daughter's like a year old, and I read Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I'm like, okay, this is triggering some stuff here from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it sent me over the edge. Anyway, this is a true story. In January of 2000, so it was my second episode just going into it, I said, I've been working, and actually in the first episode I said, I'm quitting finance. I'm not doing it. It just rips people off. I'm not doing it anymore. And my wife basically said, I don't know what you're talking about, but we need food. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Anyway, so it's like 4 years into it, and I kind of had the same thing, like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing finance, making money and stuff? And there's some goodness to it, but it's just ripping people off. So anyway, in January of 2000, the internet is relatively new in terms of wide use, and
Right.
I bought a website with a plan, and the plan is on like a tagline. I opened a business under this. The website is alphasignal.com. So alpha is tricky, and I could talk about it forever, but basically it means the Tao non-duality stuff, right? There's a middle, and it's not positive or negative. It's just what it is. It's that what permeates all. Essentially, it means God. Non-duality essentially means God, to some way of thinking. Anyway, so I created this website, and I said, you know what I need to do? I know I like what I'm doing. I make lots of money. I could make a lot of money if I just leverage what I know, and forget about whether I'm ripping people off or not. I could make a lot of money, but anyway, I'm going to create this business, alphasignal.com. And alpha, in financial terms, alpha means something very, very specific. And it's just how much return did you get per how much risk did you take? So let's say the S&P 500 over some period of time returned 10%, but it was all over the place, right? So it's up and down and up and down. I can't say the S&P 500. Let's say a strategy. A strategy did a whole bunch of ups and downs relative to the S&P 500's path. And those ups and downs are scary, right? Because you lost a lot of money. Then you're up a lot of money and you're great and you're down. So it's stressful. So it's a bad thing. So if you get the same return of the S&P 500, but the path to getting there was like these big downs and these big ups, it's stressful. So it's not as good as if you had a return that was even better than the S&P 500, just went kind of in a straight line to 10%, and you hardly had any variation. At the first period, you earned 2.5. By the second, you'd earn 5. By the third, that's just no stress at all. Because you're like, well, I'm just banking this stuff. That's alpha. That's very, very simple. That's alpha for finance. So I knew kind of in a punny way, like a Tao way, that there's another alpha, and that's the Tao alpha, or non-duality. And so I registered this domain name, and it was alphasignal.com. And what I wanted to do for like maybe 20 years is make a bunch of money in finance, prove that I know what I'm talking about from a scientific perspective, from a systems perspective, from a just, a good practitioner perspective, make a bunch of money, but more importantly than the money, get respected people to respect me so that they say, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's not some woo-woo flaky guy. So that was my plan. This was January 2000. That was my plan. And then, my plan was to have that happen in like 10 years or something. Well, long story short, come 2016, I finally had the guts, thanks to my wife, to resign and start my actual company, right? So I had this domain name that I'd paid for decades, and in the future for decades. I still have it for another 10 years. But anyway, I had paid for it, but I never used it. And finally, my wife, who worked at the same company as me, said, "Look, I don't want to listen to you when you're 80 and say you should have started this Alpha Signal finance business and you could have done rich and you could have done all the other stuff. You've got to try this." And I'm like, "Well, I make a lot of money." I did at the time, and she's like, "That doesn't matter. We have money. If you don't do this, or both of our lives will be miserable because you'll say, 'Oh, I woulda, shoulda, coulda.'" I'm like, that's
Right.
so helpful. And frankly, she made money, right? So if I left, we could still meet our bills from her income alone. And so she didn't care if I didn't make any money. So anyway, long story short, I didn't make that much money, mainly because I just used it as a fun thing instead of a work thing, and I shut it down. But my whole long-term goal was to like use it as a tool to get some clout, basically, some external validation of my ability to think, and then parlay that into something that people don't care about, and that's the Tao, and that's behaving well, and that's like being happy and causing happiness in others, and all of the good things that come with it. But since I was saying something from a scientific perspective, from a logical perspective, from a left brain perspective, people would pay attention to it. It's like, well, this isn't some granola type person or woo woo type person talking stuff. This is a finance guy who likes finance and had a great career and thinks finance is very important. But he's saying there's something more important, and that is getting your head straight, which is alpha signal if you think of a different kind of alpha. And one other thing I need to say is the signal part is the scientific engineering term of signal to noise. And if you know stereos, it's a common
Oh
thing
yeah.
that's cited. So it's the same thing. It's like, you know, you hear some noise is at 50 decibels below the sound of the music, and if it is, well, that's not very much. So that's going to sound like shit. You're going to hear all the hisses and pops and all the noises. But if it's like a 98 decibel rating, so you don't hear sound for 98 decibels, you're hardly going to hear anything. It's going to be like the first time you heard a CD with no pops or hisses or grass, that kind of thing. So anyway, that's stream of consciousness relatively quickly, but you understand, I think.
Well, yeah, you are not manifestation, and I think all of that kind of really was like, when you start looking at things like money and all of that stuff, it really starts to like you get further and further cemented into manifestation. And it's really hard, like you said, like you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That is a difficult place to be because you're not existing in either world then.
Right.
And
That's
and you're
exactly right.
constantly under the influence of the manifestation while flirting with this deeper existence. And that's hard to do when you have children and a house and a payment and a this and a that, right? Like that's
Yes,
pretty near
yes.
impossible. Like, and so what you do is you look at it and like we were talking before, like the ability to receive or the ability to yield, these concepts that the Tao kind of talks about can be utilized. Like you yielded, and you resisted and you not submitted, but you surrendered, right? Surrendering and submitting are two different things. You can surrender to something without submitting to it. And then, just being able to, and what I do here on Tao of the Day is like, I have you pick a number and then we read through one. And it's like, it's not overwhelming. It's a single concept, right? Study others and gain knowledge, study yourself and gain deep wisdom. And it's like, oh, okay, I can walk away with that. That's something that I can tangibly incorporate into my life today. And that's kind of how, for 20 years, I've been utilizing the Tao, and really, it's such a beautiful way of just continuing to reach beyond the manifestation, reach beyond the influence of others. Thank you so
So
much for joining me.
I got one last thing, and I don't know if I read this or whatever. I probably read it, but it's a cool idea. So I'm occasionally self-conscious, but you can tell by how I'm talking, not too self-conscious too often. But at work, it's the high stakes, lots of money, lots of competition, lots of smart people, lots of politics, all that stuff which exists. It was kind of stressful, and some days I just wasn't up for it. I like pretty stressed about like seeing people who are going to work. Oh, this is awful. So I came up with this thing. I think I read about it, but I came up with this thing where pretend like this magical thing exists. Like you call it, futuristic hardware or just imaginary thing. Pretend that you're not you, and you're some entity that's like, let's say, 2 or 3 feet hovering above the head. You could think of it like as a drone
Yep,
nowadays.
yep, yep,
I
yep.
think when I first came to it, there's no drones that I knew of. But anyway, so think of this thing and say, okay, I'm in control of this physical body down here, but I'm up here, this drone thing, looking around, and I'm happy. I don't have to be at work. I'm watching this physical body that has to be here, but I don't have to be here. Hey, I can control this physical body. So there, this is great. So for instance, oh, this physical body, when he sees that person, they generally frown because they think that person's an a-hole. But I'm going to make this person smile and see what happens. So
Right.
I'm no longer that physical body down there that naturally would just grouse, kind of look away from this guy and be happy he didn't have to talk to him. And I'm gonna pretend I'm this on this drone thing, and I'm gonna make him smile at this person as if it was a genuine good morning, and then see what happens. Oh, look at that! That guy who's usually an a-hole, he actually smiled and he said something. That's cool. Okay,
Right.
I got to do all this stuff today. Okay, let's erase the bad attitude and just dive right in and do it. And then it's real trippy, like a drug trip. I'm not a
It
drug person, but
is.
it's
No,
like, you know,
it simply observing rather than,
yes,
right? Simply allowing yourself to live your life rather than being so invested in the life itself. Like you're just living without
yeah.
all
What
of the
one other
judgment
thing?
with, go on.
Sorry. I just had one other thing, and this is hugely significant. This Tao stuff isn't easy, and what people understand now from whatever biology, sociology, psychology is that the average the average human is driven by animalistic stuff, certainly intellect as well, and rational choice, but they're driven at the foundational level. It's kind of programmed into programmed into animals. This bias for action. So you have this kind of safety idea and safety goal. So if you don't have any money, then you're like, I got to get some money because I need rent, I need food, I need to be able to drive, I need whatever. So you're all jacked up and you're willing to do something. If you meet somebody like I just said at work who's a jerk and you've fought with them before, they frustrated you. You see them and your body can't distinguish. I gave the bad first example, but it's like if you're an animal in the jungle and somebody's a predator, you see that animal, you react. Your body secretes hormones, chemicals, and you've got to it's the fight or flight stuff. Anyway, my point is it's easy if you kind of studied the Tao and you're a naturally calm person to be this observer and be acknowledging and feeling and actually acting from the place of I don't have to get exercise. I'm not really physically threatened, so I'm not actually threatened here. I don't need to be this way. But most people go through life not very conscious at all levels. And so that some of them are just like unconscious at all. And they don't even know that they see this person and their stomach gets uncomfortable and they get all tensed up and whatever else happens because their physiological processes in their body are causing this other thing, which, again, it's the opposite of being the observer. It's like you're
Right.
saying, this is manifesting, but it doesn't have to manifest this way. You can say, oh, this guy's not going to come over here and shoot me or kill me. So why am I stressed out? I just have to be nice to him and not engage with him and I'm fine. It's like, but you don't, it's this subconscious thing or unconscious thing or subliminal thing, whatever. It's this thing that's happening that it's driving your behavior and driving your physical health. And it's not conscious. It's like autopilot, this terrible autopilot. It was some people that really have some dysfunction. This thing's overwhelmingly on autopilot. It's just awful. And then some people that are very calm and study stuff and have gotten their body just calm, they only freak out if there's an actual tiger in front of them that's trying to eat them. Nothing else stresses them out because, the life and death threats are just not 98% of the time or whatever. They're not life and death. It's just perception and physical reaction. So
Yeah, and if a tiger's in front of you, you're not afraid. You don't have time to be afraid. You're going to do what you need to do and you're going to
that's
get it over.
brilliant.
And then that's the thing, and that's really like your body's going to take over. And and we like there's that is survival. That is something. And when we move survival into this place of finance and knowledge and all of that, then it eats us away, because then then we feel fear rather than actually just responding to what needs to be right. We do the next most obvious thing, but we actually created a world in which fear um, persists in this way that isn't natural.
So
Mark, thank you
Martin,
so much, man.
no, thank you. So a couple other things. One, I've kind of tried to figure out. I'm going to write a book, and I didn't get to the point of. So the second manifestation of alpha signal is not the finance thing. I will do that,
Oh,
but the second thing is this book. Anyway, in the book, I want to do the scientific thing, and there's a guy, Daniel Kahneman, that wrote this. No, he's a Nobel Prize winner, and it's Thinking Fast and Slow. It's one of my favorite books. But there's also people. Ian McGilchrist is another scholar that's talked a lot, wrote a very long book and multiple books about not what Kahneman talks about, this kind of innate biases that we have and what are the sources and how do we do something about it, which is super valuable. It's a different thing, and it says, okay, he's talking about kind of subconscious bias or unaware bias, which is kind of like consciousness and subconsciousness and how it influences rational decision making. This other guy that is kind of more well respected in some circles, he's very well respected, Ian McGilchrist, he says the real problem is as we've evolved from animals to deeper and deeper thinkers or more and more accomplished people, we have two systems in our brain, not the same as Kahneman, but kind of similar in that the notion of this is bipolar thing. So the two systems are um, right brain, and most people understand this stuff, and left brain. And he said what has happened is we have moved to left brain thinking, and all of these tools and cultural stuff and social media and technology has kind of pushed us more and more and more and more left brain to our net detriment, because we have all this stuff, but it's like meaningless stuff. And we have this perpetual quest for more when the more provides no marginal utility of any merit, but we still want it. Anyway, he said what we need is to reconcile this deficit because of this too much of a tilt to Western dualism, frankly, the opposite of non-duality. And what we need to do is bring it back so we have a balance between the right brain creative side and the left brain analytical side. And if you think of it like what we talked about in the Tao sense, it's like the right brain's kind of the non-dual side that sees connections and therefore sees the forest. The left brain side is the stuff that always wants to search for more trees, and then it can tell you about trees, but it can't tell you much about the forest. So the point is, it's like, yeah, we have more trees and more variety and all this other stuff, but we're losing it because we don't have enough of that substrata, I think you used the term, of the holistic view and what's kind of holding it all together, and what are the bigger patterns within these sub patterns that people are worshiping. So what is the bigger pattern? Where the big pattern is obviously you got to take the step of being an observer so you can see the
yeah,
big pattern.
right.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I've
there's
never
this
said any of that stuff, but
yeah, that really falls under the category, from my language, it's substance and structure. Like you have substance and you need structure in order to see that substance, in order to observe and to be able to utilize that substance. And that's your masculine and feminine, that's your yin and yang, that's your back and forth and all of that.
yeah. And
And
one last thing. I've talked a lot, and all this stuff is helpful for me, but it's too intellectual. The main thing is, if you have any notion of the validity of any of the stuff of the Tao or any stuff I've talked about today, we've talked about
mhm,
today, then it only comes to one conclusion. That
right.
I mean, we only have a finite time here. So if you want to prioritize things, prioritize one thing, and that is be compassionate to everybody and everything. Because you may look at someone and say, that guy's a killer, or that guy's a child rapist, or he's whatever. It's like, well, yes, you're right. I mean, we should protect
Hmm.
people from him, but
Absolutely.
he's just us, right?
But
If
he
you're looking
deserves,
at this
like,
person,
yeah, he still deserves love as well. Like,
yes, yes,
and that's where things can get complicated with people who have trauma and other things. It's like,
yes,
but the people who have trauma also deserve love and deserve to love themselves. And so when we say love everybody, recognizing you're only loving yourself.
And what's really funny, so I found this book, and the book, just anybody cares, is called Whole Child, Whole Parent by Polly Berry and Barron. It's always been my favorite book, but it's not that great. It's got some good stuff, but it's not. I mean, I've read way better books, but for me, that's my favorite because it introduced me to this stuff. Well, that was 1997. Or sorry, that was 1995. That was 1995. I was 28. So that I read that book in 1995. Long time after that, I rediscovered this card that my sister sent. We used to exchange cards with quotes, on letters basically, and we'd find a quote. And so she found this quote, and this might have initiated us exchanging quotes. And this was 1994, I think, possibly 93, way before I found this book, and I even knew what non-duality or Tao or any of this stuff was. And the quote was from Einstein, and it's my favorite quote. And I'll try to recreate it, but it won't be precise, obviously. But it's like, we all live in an optical delusion of the mind. The biggest problem we face is we see ourselves as separate from physical everything else. But that separateness is an optical delusion of the mind. We are connected, and I believe something like, I'm not doing it justice, but you can look it up. But what he says is our obligation is to not live in that delusion, but see everything and have essentially compassion for all we meet, all people, all consciousness we meet, and no different, all of nature in its entirety. And no one, very few people in the history of the world understood as much about physics as he did, right? So it's like, it's this thing, and it's like, okay, years later, I go back after I've been exposed to all this other stuff. It's like, this is what Einstein was talking about. I mean, he's a mystic. He quotes the mystic. He says mystical stuff, and it's like I joke around, but I'm actually serious. I don't give a shit about what Einstein knows about physics or figured out about physics. Like, that's common knowledge now. There's hundreds of people that know what he knew.
Yeah.
Thanks to him. But you know what I mean. But what's more impactful is like if people worshipped Einstein for his mystical wisdom, which is to you and I kind of basic, it's the Tao. In
Right.
Buddhism, kind of the foundational stuff, Hinduism before Buddhism, and then Buddhism. It's like the foundational stuff is what he would cite. And he actually was asked, if you had to choose a religion, what would it be? And he couldn't answer definitively. So he said, well, if I was forced to choose one, the one that's most akin to my thinking is Buddhism. And my thought was like any, kind of bad trajectory of where Buddhism got to or is, I don't know. The core of it is what he believed in, is this stuff. And it's like, okay, let's forget how venerated he is and honored he is for his mental achievements in physics, which have been surpassed by like Stephen Hawking and other people. They've surpassed Einstein. They solved things he didn't understand and died wishing he did. And it's like, let's not venerate these people for figuring out that stuff. Let's say, hey, great, good work, smart on you. Let's venerate them for, are they compassionate? Do they get the ultimate job we have here, Anyway, that's like a diatribe or whatever, but you understand what I'm saying.
Quite all right. And we've reached the end on my
Okay,
timer end again. So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate
thank
it.
you.
We'll chat again, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Whoops.
Dr. Rao, I have a few more minutes, so I'd love to chat. How's it going, man?
Hi, Martin.
How are you?
I am great as usual.
Yes, as always. I love it.
Yeah. I was starting a new thing. I wanted to tell you about that. It's called WIN for Human Excellence.
Win?
WIN,
W-I-N?
yeah, WIN for Human Excellence.
Okay.
W stands for Witness Consciousness, right?
Witness consciousness, yes.
Yeah, be witness. That is what our the true nature, right?
Yep.
And be that. So human excellence doesn't mean make a lot of money. Like Mark talks about, financial guy talks about non-duality, and he's in duality all the time, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about witness consciousness. Second, I is inwardness, not going outward at intellect.
Yes.
Listening, Mark? And then the last one is N. That is the new mind, beginner's mind.
Oh,
So
yeah.
nothing in the mind, no quotes from the books, no quotes, nothing. Right? So these three, then the excellence is not towards accumulation of things, but realizing the real diamond within and
Yeah.
staying there.
Yeah.
See, all that you guys are debating about is the manifestation. That's also Brahma Karavritti. That means
Absolutely. Yeah.
modification of the Brahman is what the earth and everything. Then you see Brahman in everything,
Mm-hmm.
but you are not going to be out of that,
Right.
right? So this may appear for people like a quack thing and all that because they are stuck in their own mind and they
That's
don't
quite
realize
all
that.
right.
Yeah.
We don't mind. We don't mind.
No, no. The thing is, these are pretty valuable things if we really pay attention to it and then stay there.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a Sanskrit term, couple of things, what you were talking about earlier. Uh, Vijnana, Gnana. Vijnana is about the world, the things, the manifestation, and all that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Gnana is something that you learn by yourself, by turning inward and then finding out by yourself. And that is the difficulty for a lot of people because dominated by the mind which takes you out. That's why
Mm.
empty the mind and be the beginner's mind.
Yes.
So this is something I'm talking about these days. So try to come to that. I think you will enjoy them too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've been doing. Yeah. I will keep an eye out. Thank you.
yeah. I mean, otherwise, I have an appointment at 8 o'clock. It's another 30
Oh.
minutes about. Um, then one other thing is I was doing this what's called new, NEW.
Mm-hmm.
It's about elderly people, right?
Right.
Elderly people and how we can nurturing elderly wise people.
Oh
That
yeah.
means not that they have the wisdom and we are kind of doing. No, we are trying to nurture the elderly to have a meaningful, purposeful life. That is making them more see their own wisdom within themselves. See, usually I see in the nursing homes where people are lost. People are kind of lost interest and they don't want to live because nobody is, they're looking for other people to care for them, the children, but then they are busy with their lives. So we spend a lot of suffering in that elderly group because they lose interest, they don't have the work to do, all that life they consider outward. They never consider this inward gnana.
Right.
So my nurturing elderly people is not only be there and have them discover so many activities, but also discover themselves. Suppose they come to my wellness club, they come to my meditation, they come to all that is done. Just they come and they take advantage of the offerings that I have.
Yeah. Well, I
You
think that's
understand?
great. Like it's because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, because
aging is so hard right now in the
yeah,
United
I
States.
was I was a geriatrician in 1983 to 85, a
Oh
geriatric
really?
medicine, right? In Chicago First Hospital, I was there. So I saw a lot of loneliness, a lot of dementia, a lot of withering away, and then feeling miserable. And then many people, they have everything, they earned, they have kids and all that, but then they find nothing is there for them, right?
Yeah.
So there's tremendous suffering as a old man in the, well, look at me. I think I have change every day, and I have things to pursue. I have things to give. So my life is like a, where is the time like, but still I'm relaxed and happy and joyful. So there is a way for everybody to discover that. We are not special or anything. It's only a question of correct understanding, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I want to create activities for them to go through, but at the same time, I want to give them this insight into how our human mind works and how we can use it, how can we out of it. That is the beginner's mind. That is the my mind. I'm talking about new mind. Okay, there is
Yeah,
no
I like
mind.
it.
You see, that's the one I want to read them, but that may appear like something crazy for people. But then we don't want to pour that on them. So be quiet and know you are God.
That's right. That's right. It can break down that simply.
Yeah, yeah. There's another thing. I think Ramana quoted that. He said, this pursuit of all this knowledge, not the external thing, internal thing also, all that is not needed. All you need is be quiet.
That's right.
Don't pursue anything. Then there is another Sanskrit great saying that I remember, Martin. Praptasya prapti, nivrittasya nivritti. What you
Okay.
are, you will gain. What you are not, you will lose.
Oh, that was such a that is
Upanishad.
the when I first started my recovery journey, it
Yeah,
was I had asked, what am I going to be without drinking and using? And then a
yeah,
friend of mine looked at me and said, you're going to be more you.
yeah.
And I
That's
realized that
exactly.
it was such a beautiful way of kind of understanding it.
Yeah, this is Upanishads thousands of years ago that said that.
Yeah.
So lose what you are not, all these talks and everything,
Yeah.
and then preserve what you are.
That's right. Beautiful. Yeah, no, that is such a that's an
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I
You
love
see,
that.
for me, the day I am happy and everything by myself, and when I interact with these people in the minds, basically, I can see that very clearly. Confused minds, unsatisfied minds, and really miserable minds. But the mind is also not you, so lose it.
Right. Absolutely. Let it
Lose
go.
it, lose it, and be yourself. Just be.
Yes. Just be you. Like all of
Yeah,
this is just all of this is continuing to just be this
yeah,
knowledge that we pick
yeah.
up and all it's all from somewhere else.
There's another thing, and I was watching Krishnamurti and Anderson talks. They had a very famous um, dialogue one time. They say, everybody wants to find out about these things. Then they gather, they don't say, oh, my mind is taken over me or my mind is confused. They say, somebody else, other people do this and all that. Then they said, when you want to quote other people, not yourself, you shouldn't have gathered here at all to discuss these matters. Discuss
Mm,
about yourself, inward. Where you discuss? Not in the group, not in the dialogues,
right.
but when you are alone.
And quiet.
Be quiet and then discover yourself. Lose what
Right.
you are not, lose what you are not, and gain you already are.
That's right, because
That is
you
that
are
is the being.
already it. It is you
Yeah,
cannot escape it.
that is the being.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to go, Martin. I'll
Absolutely.
talk to
Thank
you
you
later.
so much. I appreciate that clarity. You're always such a light. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for joining me for Tao of the Day. This one went long. Usually I like to just kind of keep it short at an hour, but Mark came on, and I really appreciate all that he had to say. So thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Cecilia. and Catherine. You're all wonderful, and I appreciate everything that you've contributed to this talk today. And I'll be back tomorrow, 6 a.m. Central Time, doing more Tao. So if you are interested in picking a number tomorrow, definitely join me. You can find a copy of my rendition of the Tao Te Ching on my website, martinjohn.com, and you can find a link to that in my profile. Much love to you guys. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Oh, what was that? I always end these with the same line, and here I am just winging it. I always want to say, and until next time, keep recovering yourself, because that's the point of all this, that we recover to who we are. We drop all the influence, drop all the ideas of identity, and recover to who we are. Thank you. And keep recovering yourself.